Where do you see the biggest risks then, Mark? I mean, is the dollar the biggest risk? Are you worried about the Fed continuing to raise rates? Are there structural problems in some of these emerging markets that concern you? The trade war, what is it?
I think the biggest risk, short-term risk, would be a downturn in the U.S. equity market. I mean, that's quite possible. You can have some event, whatever it may be, causing a big fall in the U.S. market. That would frighten capital markets around the world, and you will see a correction not only in the European markets, not only in Japan, but in emerging markets as well. So I would say that's the biggest risk that we face.
And with that in mind, do you worry about yields in the US being above 3%? Is that a marker that matters for the emerging market story?
Definitely. I mean, as the yields go up, of course, people will be attracted to the dollar unless the Europeans raise their rates, unless other countries, of course, emerging markets have been forced to raise their rates up to now. But unless that happens, you're going to see a drive into the U.S. dollar more and more.
You've seen emerging market crises for decades now, Mark, and a lot of people were comparing at one point the slump that we saw in EM over the last month to what we saw in 1997. The word contagion came up a lot. It doesn't look like it's gotten to that, but how would this compare among the crises that you've invested through?
Well, let's just take Argentina. We were investing in Argentina in the early 90s when the inflation was 2,000%. So you can imagine this is very mild when we look at the general history of what's happened in emerging markets.
The emerging market contagion story, we can talk about it whether one emerging market is contagious to another or whether the emerging market sell-off is contagious to developed markets. How does all of that fit, do you think, this time around? Because every sell-off in EM is different.
Well, you know, the contagion is a psychological concept because if you look at emerging markets around the world, they're so different. The variety is incredible. So you really can't rationalize the fact that Argentina is down and therefore Vietnam should go down. They're so different. So that's the beauty of the situation. Of course, if there's a belief that there's contagion and everybody sells, that's good for bargain hunters because you're going to find opportunities in those countries that shouldn't be contagion prone and are doing very well.